Hello, I'm Andrea Cooper, Executive Director of Upstate Forever. Upstate Forever is a conservation organization that promotes smart growth while protecting our natural resources in the 10 upstate counties, the same counties that 10 Top works in. We're lucky enough to live in a region that's truly special. Whether it's the rural character, breathtaking landscapes, outdoor recreation opportunities, or vibrant communities that brought you to the upstate, or are keeping you here, we want the upstate to remain beautiful, and it's truly one of a kind. We want to keep it that way, and now is the time to take action to do that. We want to make sure that growth over the next 25 years is not at the expense of the things that we love most about the region today. We hope that the presentation you hear next will help you understand why it is so critical to begin taking action now on changing our current land use course. For the next 25 years, our region has been making land use choices that consume a tremendous amount of land, excuse me, and do not pay for themselves. As our population increases, we will feel the impacts of that sprawling growth pattern even more. Make no mistake, we are on a crash course to becoming the very type of congested, paved over metropolitan region that we've always said that we do not want to become. The information presented next can be used to shape a positive future for the region. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Matt Noonkester. And Matt is the president of City Explained and was the lead consultant on this effort. You can read Matt's bio in the program, but one thing I can say that may not appear within that bio is that Matt and his team have worked tirelessly over the past 10 months to conduct this analysis. They have had countless meetings with developers, utility providers, local planners, elected officials, and community leaders to ensure that the recommendations they present are applicable to and actionable in the upstate. From the start, they've recognized that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to this type of work. And we in the upstate will benefit from their unique approach and dedication. Welcome, Matt.
Okay, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for having us. As Dean has mentioned, the dialogue about regional planning and growth and how you all can work together has been occurring for a decade and longer. What this really is another chapter in that process you're going through where we've been asked to put more meat on the bones. And what I mean by that is to start to produce some data that goes with those prior studies and surveys of looking at attitudes and values. We're not looking at providing data, measuring impacts, evaluating trade-offs, so we can be more informed as we make our decisions running forward. A couple of points. I'm going to speak to you more about kind of what we did, and then Joe's going to join me midway through the presentation and talk about how it happens, why it happens, where it's happening, and those kind of things, so we can really understand it at its most basic level. And then I'll come up and sort of wrap things up, and I'm most excited about the panel that's going to come together. So it's you all talking about what you can do with this in your growth and have that discussion starting today, which is really great. One other point to make. At this point in time, what our charge was, and the reason I feel really important and invested in this study, was we were asked to measure the trade-offs of different growth choices you have. When you read the document and the other things that come out that we've produced, we're not advocating for any one growth pattern, but we're telling you you need to be prepared, you better be prepared based on the decisions you make and which direction you go, because they have wildly different futures for you, depending on which path you choose for you. So with that, let's kind of get into the presentation. So just so everybody is all on the same page, whenever we mention upstate this afternoon, we're talking about the 10-county region. That's how our study was done. And we're looking at almost 6,000 square miles, so not your typical small study area, right? 6,000 square miles. We're looking at 62 different cities and towns that are working with 10 different counties to try to struggle with all these things about growth and the directions that it pulls us. And then we have so many other stakeholders and partners in the area that are able to engage with this process and you will want to engage with as as you move forward. So the study itself, we broke into sort of two general parts. The first part was more based on technology, and we did a bunch of computer modeling. And that computer modeling was done at that 10-county region. So we collected data, we got information, we performed analysis, always in that 10-county region in order to provide what we needed moving forward to provide you feedback about different ways you can grow. As a partner to that, there were certain issues that just required us to go more in depth and deep dive on these things. And either they pertain because some parts of the region are growing faster right now than others, or you have other obstacles or opportunities ahead of you. So we chose a case study approach to jump into each of those because we can all learn from what others in the region are doing. And those are summarized in the document. I'll stop here to really hone in on this is what's driving us to do our study. And the term, the elevator speech, came up. This is our elevator speech. The first thing we have to say is that population in the upstate is continuing to rise and will continue to rise for the foreseeable future. So doing nothing is not an option. No matter what, this growth is coming and it's going to impact your quality of life and the way you do business. So the other thing to think about is sometimes the decisions that are made today have impacts on the future, and the length of time it takes those decisions and investments to come to fruition is sometimes not well timed with growth and development unless it's been planned for now, knowing what you're anticipating in the future. And then the fourth one is really what I'm most committed to, which is it's important that you study, understand, report, talk about what are those different trade-offs of growth options, just so you feel better about the direction you're going if there's any changes you want to make. So this is kind of what drove us and all those different people who stood up and others that were part of the study. So I'll start, and we started our project kind of saying, well, where are we going? Where's the compass pointing right now in terms of the trend trajectory? That's what we call it. And so what we did first was we went and surveyed all the different comprehensive plans, zoning ordinances, all those policies and documents that local governments use to guide growth. We looked at what are conditions like in those areas where they don't have zoning, or where development occurs in other ways, in different ways. And we said, what if we just put all that together on a map first? What are we looking at? Well, the snapshot of where your compass is pointing right now is more of a low-density, decentralized, single-use growth pattern. And I'm speaking regionally when I say that. There are some exceptions when you come into greater detail. It means that as that growth is marching outward, you have to expand your infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, schools, parks, public safety. All that has to catch up to where the new growth is going. It also means that it's usually connected with an extensive road network that continues to grow and emerge as you go. And then there's a rapid loss of sort of vacant land, either forest or trees or things of that nature, as that land's being consumed for that new development as the edges as you go out. This is what happens when you go out to 2040. And you look at that area in red, if you continue that trajectory with that population and employment growth that we're assuming, this is how much more land gets consumed when we're looking at a low-density, decentralized growth pattern. And it should be somewhat at least awakening to you that it means that we then have to plan infrastructure and everything else that goes with it in those areas in the red between now and 2040. And so we would want to be prepared. So how is that happening? I want to be very clear because people think that local governments control growth and development. And if they can change things, everything else will change. They're only one part of the puzzle. And so you have to also look at what type of demographics you have. Where do people want to live? What type of homes do they want to live in? Where do people want to work? What do businesses need and where do they need to locate? You have to look at what developers even want to build. What are they interested in? Because they're the ones who are actually bringing the product out of the land. What are the lending institutions allowing us or wanting us to do? Because they're the ones who are funding development. And so local government is one part of this equation, but it's going to take a complete effort of everybody in the region to either instill change or, again, be prepared for the path you're on today. Now, in all those documents that Dean had mentioned, and the ones that we were able, or the people we were able to engage with as well, one thing kept coming out. And this has been reoccurring for almost a decade in those documents that started early. No matter what, don't make me Charlotte, and sure don't make me Atlanta. Right? It keeps coming up over and over. And why? Well, we don't want to have crazy traffic problems. We don't want to have overcrowded schools. We don't want to just have all this density and people not knowing what to do or how to act. And so you all have agreed that you've seen what the future can look like in other locations and you don't want to go there. And so that's why that trend trajectory is so important. And you believe in it so much that I hark back to about at least 7 years ago, I remember. I was on an airplane on US Airways, and this was the article in the magazine. I'm one of those guys who actually reads that little magazine that comes through right in the back of the seat. This was here, and it was promoting Greenville as not being Charlotte or Atlanta. You were promoting it and telling people, you should come try us out. We're not going to be like that. Well, we heard you, and we listened, and everyone's moving here. What does that mean for you now? And so, as part of that, this is kind of the stuff we're starting to deal with, which are those problems that are occurring in Charlotte, Atlanta, and other places like you. So you have that increased traffic congestion. Our schools are overcrowded. You see in the bottom left-hand corner the ills, tribulations, and how just darn hard it is to build new infrastructure, especially new infrastructure in new locations. Skyrocketing home prices and home choices. People are being priced out of the market in Charlotte, for example, right now. What does that mean to be a complete community? All those problems are coming at even higher degrees than you're used to because you invited everybody down. So we're all happy about that, but it means that you're going to have those same problems because guess what? It's already starting to show up. That canary in the coal mine is already there in certain cases. When I come down for the project, I would come down from Charlotte down Interstate 85, no problems till I hit the 385, Woodruff Road, all that kind of corridor, right? And then I came to a screaming halt and it didn't feel like I was anywhere but Charlotte or Atlanta, right? So you're already starting to see some of those signs as they come up now. So, as part of our project, what we were asked to do was look at those names. These are names of scenarios that came out of the ULI reality check event. But we were asked to kind of put a story and some themes behind each one so we can measure those impacts and evaluate those trade-offs. So you see here we have 3 scenarios that we're looking at. The trend growth scenario is what we're assuming is the path you're on. And then 3 alternatives that are out there that you may want to consider in the future. So very quickly to kind of reorient our eyes, this is the trend scenario. I've already presented it to you, but just kind of focus on how much red there is on the map compared to the gray or tans, which is what is the existing development footprint now. And then I'll run you through a couple of the alternatives that we studied. First, if you're going to live or work within the trend scenario, this is kind of the stuff we're thinking about. You see there's cars, and, pictures of cars and drawings of cars in almost every of the images. That's how we would get around. We would have more of our single uses. We would have to widen our roads to make sure we could get to that peak period when everybody wants to travel. But it's more about low density, single use, decentralized growth patterns. Now, one of the alternatives we look at, which if I call the trend scenario one side of the aisle in the bookend, this is the other side of the aisle in the bookend. This is called the compact scenario. Now, this is academic, it's extreme, it's something I never think will ever happen here. Because we went so far the other way that we put all of the growth for the 10-county region to fit in an area no larger than the city of Greenville. But we did it to make a point. So if you see here, there's barely any red creeping out from the tan. But where all those dots are, we would be incredibly diligent on putting our growth into those existing centers that already exist. At least one per county, plus with Greer and dividing between Spartanburg and Greenville. If we lived like that, what we're trying to do is really rely on moving people, not moving cars. And so if you do that, you might have the densities and intensities required for transit, for bus rapid transit, maybe even, I was told not to even talk about light rail, but who knows how far we go now, right? Those kind of things are all possible when you have density and intensity. It also means, though, when you make people live in a smaller confine, a closer area, you've got to provide them access to nature so that they can decompress. And so you would have those type of elements as well in the compact center scenario. Now the next 2 scenarios I'm showing you are a little more moderate and they're more realistic, kind of from what we were hearing from the project. The first one is called the rural villages scenario. As part of that one, we're still following the tenets of focusing development in the tighter areas. So we'd like it to be mixed use, we'd like it to have walking distance between destinations, those type of things. But we have a little of it occur everywhere you see a dot. So it's not so extreme. It lets all the cities and towns that are within the 10-county region grow and prosper. As part of that, we would also look for other infrastructure and things that reinforce these places that we're trying to create. So as part of that, you might have concentrations of employment still, but they're surrounded by all these other places or areas where you can have a mix of uses and neighborhoods and communities and the like. again, at a smaller scale than that compact scenario, where we're putting it all in a very tight spot, but following a lot of those same tenets and principles. The last scenario that we looked at was called the growth corridor scenario. And what this was doing was recognizing that there was space between cities, towns, and other activity areas that would also likely grow because of the connections we create between them. So you see even more dots, and you see little hints of red as the footprint expands, but it's sort of controlled to be around our growth corridors. That concentration of growth and development allows things like transit, but also we need to make highway and road improvements to connect those centers back and forth. Land outside of that area, we would try to remain more rural and forested, so that we were growing in a controlled manner so that water, sewer, and school and other investments could be made in a more manageable pace. Living in those areas, you see again a lot of the same stuff you saw from the earlier scenarios, that mix of uses, trying to shorten trip distances, allow people to travel by other ways other than automobile. So we had all those scenarios, and we had to control some things, so like population, employment, how much was coming. We tried not to be too tricky with that because we wanted to influence the outcome. But here's what we were able to sort of change. We changed how big or small the water and sewer service areas were because we had to chase where the development was occurring. The land use patterns and intensities themselves, we varied between the scenarios to see what the impacts would be. The number of and type of activity centers, all those dots that you saw on the map, allowed us to measure the differences and the trade-offs between them. We looked at different road networks, where you see development status. We were talking about how much is redevelopment versus new development in greenfield areas, and then our home choices. So for example, if you were to do the compact centers and want to live in a single family home in one of those centers, it might be tight, because we need multifamily housing to get that many more people in such a small area. So we looked at turning the dial between a single family and a multifamily environment that you might be able to live in. So again, I'm going to focus on sort of the what we did. This is sort of the early signs that were coming out that Joe's going to be able to really go into great detail on for us. And so the first one is, how much land did we use, again in a modeled environment, how much land did we use to accommodate the same amount of people living and working in the region, the 10-county region? If you look on the left, that's what's there today. And I can tell you, because I had to participate in it, we literally panned aerial photography for all 6,000 square miles and coded whenever we saw development or when we didn't see development. And so that's about how many square miles are developed today when you look at those aerials and you move it into a vector-based and computer environment. To do the trend scenario, you see you are more than doubling the amount of growth that you would need in order to accommodate that same amount of population. If you try to focus and understand all those different colors, in the report we can slow down and get to it, but here, if you see where the yellows and the reds are, that's residential development at a suburban or rural scale density. So something less than even 4 units per acre. That's what's eating up all the land. When you go to the alternatives for the compact scenario, the rural villages, or even the corridors, you see that our idea, what we were measuring and looking at was, what if you can get more control over where people are predominantly living so that we can have higher densities and intensities, and we know that the work and the employment will follow. So you see there's a tremendous difference in terms of how much growth and development consumes land by the different scenarios. And land consumption means costs that have to follow that. So if we actually look at it this way, you see that in order to follow the trend scenario, one of the bookends, you're going to use 40 times more land than if you use the compact scenario. Now, granted, the compact scenario is probably too far the other way, right? I told you it's very academic. So I focus more sort of what's in the middle. And so from the rural land scenario, you'd be 7 times more efficient. I'm sorry, yeah, 7 times more efficient. And on the corridor scenario, you could be up to 10 times more efficient. Same number of people, same employees, lower cost because you have the lower footprint that you have to serve. So what does that mean? If you're actually comparing dollars and cents here, we see here on the orange is the generally anticipated revenue for what? And if we look at the blue, that's the anticipated cost. And you see that in order, especially with roads, you see the trend development scenario skyrocket. It is not cheap to build new roads through the region. And so, as we look at this, you look at the discrepancies in the way you're going to grow. And again, I'm not telling you you should pick one of those or the other. That's your decision as a region. I'm the visitor. That's your decision as the region. But you need to be prepared for the ones you pick so that you can provide those services that the residents are going to demand and protect the quality of life that brought people